What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's starting to be that time of year again where it starts to get cold, especially up here in the Northeast. And lately I've been seeing a whole bunch of videos of people using those little Chinese diesel heaters to try to heat their space. And I just don't think that that's sufficient for a garage or workshop style space. I just don't think they put out enough BTUs to actually make a noticeable difference. So I wanted to take some time today to show you guys how we heat our space and how we came to that conclusion. We have tried using a few different options for heating this area, and we ended up settling on liquid propane. So I've got two different forced hot air heaters that run off of propane here, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about them today, the differences between them and which one we tend to use most. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Through the intro, I want to talk a little bit about both of these heaters and which one we tend to use most. But before we do that, I do want to mention that I do recommend having a carbon monoxide meter no matter what form of heat you're using. This is a great safety precaution to have in any workspace or shop. So I definitely recommend picking one of these up if you guys don't have one. And I'll show you guys what ours registers at when we're running this heater for prolonged periods in the shop. So to start off with, we've got the smaller unit over here on our left. They are both made by Dyna-Glow. This black one is a Dyna-Glow Pro, and then this one is a Dyna-Glow Deluxe. Now, the Pro is the one that we tend to use most in the shop here, and as you can see, they both have some wear and tear on them because we have been using them for the last 3 to 4 years, and in the spring, summer, and fall, they get stored outside in our carport, so they do have some surface rust on them. And you can also notice on the one that we use most, this Dyna-Glow Pro, that the adjustment knob is actually broken, but we can still adjust it just fine with your hands. And I'll show you guys the startup sequence on the gray one here so that you can see with the knob. But we will be testing the smaller unit today because that's the space that we have, and it just works phenomenal in here. So to start off with some specs on this one is rated at 30 to 60,000 BTUs, and it says that it can heat up to a 1,350 square foot space. Now, I'm not quite sure if it would do that, but I do think that it would handle a 900 to 1,000 foot space pretty well. Now, they say that this will last for 14 hours on a 20-pound propane bottle running at the low setting, but we usually tend to use a 30-pound bottle just because if I use a 30, I almost make it through the entire week, and that's on a week where we are down here almost every day, all day, so it actually does pretty decent on propane. Now, stepping over to the bigger one here, this is a much bigger unit. We've had it for about the same period of time, but this one does burn a whole lot more propane, but by doing so, it heats a lot bigger space. So this one is rated at 120,000 to 150,000 BTUs, and they say that it'll heat up to a 3,500 square foot space, which I've never put it to the test, but I can tell you this one puts off a ton of heat. If we run it in our little garage here, it'll heat this whole place up hot within 2 to 3 minutes. So this thing definitely pumps out a whole bunch of heat, but like I said, it uses a whole lot more propane. So now that we've talked a little bit about each heater, let's go ahead and get set up. There's a test that I want to run today. We're going to check our starting temp in the shop. I'll show you guys the thermometers here in a minute. Then we'll fire the smaller unit up here, our 60,000 BTU unit, and we will run it for 30 minutes from the time that I ignite it. And then we'll go around and check our temps and see what we've gotten the space up to. Now, like I said, ours is just a small 2-car garage, but I have used this in a much bigger space at my buddy's dyno shop, and it actually works phenomenal. So let's get set up and start the test. So now that we've talked a little bit about the heaters, I want to do a little test in our garage here. It's not super cold today. It's not down in the teens or 0 or anything like that, but it's pretty chilly. You're going to want to take the bite off. So we have ran these heaters when it's been negative before, and it does a great job. It gets it super comfortable in here, but we just don't have a day that cold to test yet. So we're going to go ahead and test it today. I've got a bunch of thermometers set up all around the garage so that we can get a good starting temp. Then we'll run these heaters for 30 minutes and see where we end up. We're only going to be testing the small heater today. We're not going to run the big one because we just don't need to in here. It'll heat up this garage in a minute or two, like super quick. So we're going to use the smaller one because I feel like that one's just better for a 2-car or 3-car garage. So let's take a look at our setup with our thermometers here. Like I said, I've got a couple on the wall here. This one is reading right around 48 degrees. This one's reading just over 50. And then we've got some digital ones over here. You can see I've got my voltmeter set up with a little temp probe at about walking height. And we'll go ahead and turn that thing on. That one is reading right around 43 degrees. And then if we come over to this one, which I have just around waist height, turn that one on. 42 degrees as well. So that's going to be our starting temperature. We'll get this heater fired up, and as soon as I ignite it, we'll start a timer for 30 minutes and see what the temperature ends up at in the garage. Let's get our heater set up so we can start our test. So obviously you're going to need a propane bottle, the heater, and you're going to need an extension cord for power for the igniter. So we can take our propane hookup here and we can just simply screw this onto the bottle. Make sure that the O-ring on it is good. If you bang it around or anything like that, you can rip them. But it is a left-handed thread. So we'll go ahead and get this thing tightened up. Now we can move the propane bottle away from the heater, out of our way. We can bring the heater over and get our extension cord. Now once I plug this extension cord in, you guys might not be able to hear me as well, but I'm just going to plug it in. I'm going to open up the propane bottle all the way, and then I like to go a quarter to a half a turn back towards closed. Then we'll go ahead and do the ignition sequence with the little igniter and heat control down there. But I'm going to show you that on the other heater so that you guys can see the knob because I broke this one off. Like I mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to show you guys the startup sequence on this heater here because the knob is still intact and this one is currently unplugged, so the fan is off. So it's a very easy sequence. I know on some of the Harbor Freight and other brand heaters, they have multiple switches and buttons and stuff. This one doesn't. It just has this one control knob. You plug it in, the fan will automatically kick on and stay on. And then we can turn on our propane bottle. Now, once your propane bottle is opened up, you can take this knob and you'll feel that it's spring loaded. So when you push it in, you can turn it to the left and you'll feel a stop right there. It won't go any further than that. And at this point, it will already be igniting and you will hear this thing fire off. Once it fires off, I hold it in for just a couple seconds, just like that. I hold it for probably 4 or 5 seconds, and then you can slowly release it and it should stay going. If it doesn't, repeat the same sequence, turn it all the way back down by pushing in and turning right, push it in again, turn it to the left, it'll start to ignite, and once it's going, you can release. Now once you release and it stays going, then you can start adjusting the temperature simply by turning it all the way to the left. So at this point, it's turned all the way up and it's gonna put out as much heat as it possibly can. It's a very simple system, very easy to use, and it works quite well. Now to shut it down, it is very simple as well, but I'm gonna wait to show you guys how to do that until after we do our test, because there is a little trick to it to keep these things in the best shape you can and to keep them from smelling weird or having igniting issues. So make sure to stay tuned till after the test to see how we shut these things down. You can hear the igniter going. You push in on the knob and turn it to the left. You'll hear it fire up. Once you hold it for a few seconds, you can slowly release it. If it doesn't ignite, go back. Push it again, you'll hear it ignite again. Hold it for a few more seconds. Slowly release it, and then you can turn it up. So we'll go ahead and start our timer. 30 minutes. See what the temperature gets up to. So the heater's been going for 10 minutes. Let's take another look at temperatures. So as you guys can see, we're at 1948. Let's see. We are at 62, I'd say, on that one. That one's right about the same, a little over 60. Let's go check the other ones. That one's at 65, 66. Let's take a look at the farthest one. That one's at 60. Let's take a look at the carbon monoxide detector. Let's see what our time is at. That is still registering at 0. We can even move it downwind a little bit. We'll set it down here. Set it up on that guy for now. See what it says. Check our time. We'll let it run and we'll check in again. I interrupt today's video to tell you guys about a video that we did a little while back with Auxito LED. They are a great quality bulb and they have a plug and play bulb for many applications. I have been extremely happy with mine, and as you guys can see, compared to your standard halogen bulb, they are extremely bright, and we have worked with them to get you guys a code that you can enter at checkout to save 10%, bought to build, all capitals, no spaces, and I will also put a link to their website in the description of today's video. Let's get back to today's video. Just hit the 20-minute mark. Heater's still going strong. Let's go ahead and check our temps. So as you guys can see, that one's up to like 66. That one's right about the same, a little over 65. Let's see what we've got over here. This one turns off sometimes. One's at 67, we'll say. Let's check this one over here. That one's at 64. So it's doing a good job at heating this space. Heater's going strong, nice and warm, really. Almost gonna take my sweatshirt off. If you stand right in front of it, it's like hot. But to heat this space, it's been about 20 minutes, like I said, and it is definitely comfortable in here. So we'll let it run for the 10 minutes that we have left, and then we'll check again. Now I know we didn't start this test on the coldest day because it hasn't been that cold yet, but we have ran these heaters for the last 3-4 years, and on plenty of those days it's been in the negatives or at least 0. So it does help a lot having this nice little heater in here. It'll take the edge off without a doubt, and even when it's 0 degrees outside, we've had it up to 65, 70 degrees in here. You just might need to let the heater run a little bit longer on those super cold days. Now the only thing that I forgot to mention about these heaters that is a downside is the fan noise. They do put off quite a bit of noise, as I'm sure you guys can tell in these clips. It's not like ridiculously loud, but it is obviously there. We have a TV in the garage, and if we have the heater running, I do have to turn the volume up quite a bit. So that would be one of my only downsides or my only complaint about running this style heater, is they do make quite a bit of noise. But if you're like me and use AirPods most of the time, it doesn't really bother me, and we don't run it all day. We run it for a little while, shut it down, and then you're good to go. So we'll let this thing finish out its time and take our final temps. Got a little bit over a minute left, so let's check our temps one last time. Heater's still running strong. So the temp over here is just about 68. That one up there is reading just about 70. Let's check these ones over here. This one's 68, 69. So just about 70 there as well. And then our farthest one is at 67 as well. So this thing is definitely doing a good job. I'm going to show you guys the shutdown sequence here in just a minute. We've got 45 seconds left on the clock. We'll shut this thing down. All right, let's go ahead and shut this thing down. I'm going to show you guys the proper shutdown sequence so that yours lasts a long time and you don't have any weird smells or igniter issues. So as you can see, I've shut the propane off, and then I'm going to put my hand here. The flame is obviously out. You can feel that the air is pretty warm still coming out of this heater. So we're going to let that run for a couple seconds here until that is to a cool temperature. We want the air that's coming out of this thing to be pretty cool. Alright, so it's been just about a minute, and this is just about cool to the touch. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure our valve is off for next time when we go to use it. And then we can go ahead and unplug the fan itself, the heater. And as you guys can see, the shutdown sequence is super easy. It's as simple as that. I always kill the bottle first and let the flame go out. Then we run it until the air coming out is nice and cool, because what we have noticed is if you don't do that, then the igniter and the burner inside there gets all corroded or some sort of weird white powder on it, and then it doesn't want to ignite, and the next time you go to run it, it's going to smell really weird. So we've just gotten in the habit of shut the propane off, let it run for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes. It'll cool itself down, and then you're good to go to shut this thing off. I think I forgot to show it very much, but we did move our carbon monoxide meter up here in the front of the flame area just so that we could get a nice reading. If it was putting anything out, this is where it would get the most of. And as you guys can see, it remained at 0 the entire time we were burning this heater. So let's go ahead, get them thrown back up on the bench and take another look at them. So now that you guys have seen how well this little heater worked in our 30-minute test, it gets this place up to temperature extremely well. Now I tend to come down here, run it for about 20 minutes, cut it off, we work for a while, and if the temperature starts to come down, I can fire it up for another 10 or 15 minutes and it'll get nice and warm in here once again. So it's worked out perfectly for us, for our needs and for our space, but we didn't just start there. We ended up trying a few different options to heat the space before we ever went to propane. Now the first one, in most people's cases, just like ours, was electric, and we quickly found out that to get any sort of substantial heat from electric, you were gonna need a whole lot of power draw, and with us running a welder and a compressor almost constantly, it just wasn't feasible for us to put in another box just for that heater. So we quickly moved away from electric and ended up trying out wood, because we do heat this house with wood, so I thought it might be a good option to try out a wood stove. But we ran into a few issues there. We didn't have a great feasible way to run a chimney for that thing, and we ended up running one out the window with a little special made barricade to keep from burning anything, and it did work out pretty decently, but A, it was kind of in the way and it was just stationary. You couldn't move the thing around. B, you had to come down and start it a couple hours before you actually wanted to work in here to get it comfortable, and then we ultimately decided to go away from that because of those reasons. And then we started trying out propane. Now I didn't start off with one of the forced air propanes. We actually started off with one of the little burners that mounts on top of the bottle, and we quickly went to the double, and then we ended up moving to one that sat on the floor, almost like you were sitting around a campfire. And they all worked decently, but you had to be right up on them for them to be effective at all at warming you up. And then I was walking through Home Depot one day and came across one of these style heaters, and we've all seen the old Salamander kerosene diesel heaters, and it looked very similar to that, so I figured it might function similar to that. So we wanted to give it a try, and I've been with them ever since. That was 4 years ago, and we've been running them ever since then because it's just worked out perfectly for our needs. Now, I will say I haven't had any issues except for self-induced issues. So like I said, I broke the little knob on it. That was my fault. I kicked it. And then we also had an issue with them putting off a strange smell and not wanting to ignite right. And that ended up being caused by our shutdown sequence, because once I cleaned all of that white gunk out of there that it had built up from shutting it down improperly and started doing the proper shutdown sequence, we never had an issue again. You've just got to let that fan run until the unit is completely cool, which can be kind of annoying sometimes, but it's just what you need to do to have them function properly. Other than that, we haven't had any issues out of these heaters in the 4 years that I've owned them. They're a great option for a space like this because you can move them around, and also if you're going to go help a buddy out or you're going to be working outside in the cold, the only thing you need for these things to run is an extension cord, a propane bottle, and the heater itself. So it's a great option if you're going to be outside, go into a buddy's garage, anything like that. You can bring the heat right with you, which I've done numerous times. Outside, they work really well if you have them pointed at you. So I've been extremely happy with running this style heater. Hopefully today's video could help you guys out in making a decision on how you want to heat your space. As always, I appreciate you for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms: Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.